Like you don't have to do seven different things to go to bed. It could be one thing that just actually makes you feel good and supported.
Welcome to the Dutch Podcast, where we dive deep into the science of hormones, wellness, and personalized healthcare. I'm Dr. Jaclyn Smeaton, Chief Medical Officer at Dutch. Join us every Tuesday as we bring you expert insights, cutting edge research, and practical tips to help you take control of your health from the inside out. Whether you're a healthcare professional or simply looking to optimize your own well being, we've got you covered. The contents of this podcast are for educational and informational purposes only. This information is not to be interpreted or mistaken for medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for medical advice, diagnosis, and treatment. Hi, welcome to this week's episode of the Dutch Podcast. This week's topic is something that I think is near and dear to so many women's hearts, which is how we can be at our best performance. My guest today started working with professional athletes and really learned a lot about not just what went into performance, but what went into recovery. And the fact that recovery was really the unlock. She said there's whole teams of people dedicated to recovery once athletes perform. Now, what's so cool about this guest is that she's taken that concept and really applied it to the everyday woman who she explains we are the athletes of our lives. We are in our own performance. I mean, maybe in the gym, but also at work and at home as a mom and with our friends and all the ways that we want to show up in our life. And at the same time, we need to be putting that same emphasis and effort into our own recovery. She's really experienced with Dutch testing and walks us through what we can see and what women report that would lead us to order a Dutch test, and also what patterns and trends might indicate to us that a woman is not focusing enough on her recovery. And this goes for every stage of life. You are going to really love this episode. It's so usable. You're going to take the information that you learned today and put it into practice right away. Now, so my guest today is Jenn Pike. She's a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, a registered holistic nutritionist, a medical exercise specialist, and a movement educator. And she's got over 30 years working in women's health and hormones. She's the best-selling author of The Simplicity Project and founder of so many programs like the Hormone Project, Ignite, the Peri and Menopause Project, and Synced. And a cycle-informed fitness studio for women. She has so much experience, and I loved the insights she shared. I want to get them started so we can share these with you now. So let's go ahead and roll into the episode. Well, Jenn, thank you so much for joining me today on the Dutch Podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, your expertise is like so diverse, and I love all the different ways that you've engaged with women. Can you share a little bit about what brought you here? I mean, I know we've heard your basic bio, but how did your own experience and early work with clients kind of shape the way that you think about exercise, women's health, hormone, metabolism?
It was honestly, when I came out of school, I was thrust right into working with professional athletes, players in the NHL, and those who had been drafted and were getting ready to go. And so I was actually working in a very male dominant, masculine type of industry in fitness. And I was still teaching group exercise classes and doing personal training for women in a gym where I had lived. And I loved working with athletes. I mean, you are exposed to some of just the most incredible technology for training and education. The research is nonstop, and that really fed me for a long time until I realized that what was really helping a lot of these athletes thrive was the environment. And it was, they had a team. They had like every resource you could possibly imagine. And I would go back home and I would train these everyday women. A lot of them were moms. I wasn't a mom yet at the time. And I just remember thinking to myself, my God, these women are the everyday athletes of life. And they have the fewest amount of resources and tools. And they're trying so hard to carve out the time to take care of themselves, work with what they had. And I became more and more interested in supporting them and becoming part of their team. And so I left working, with the athletes and dove headfirst into building my business around working with women physically first. And then what I realized is a lot of their questions were, I'm feeling great with the exercise, I'm getting stronger, but I am so freaking tired, or my hair is thinning and falling out. I feel like maybe I have a thyroid issue. I'm going to my doctor. I'm getting labs done. They tell me everything is fine. I do not feel fine. And I really started to listen to their stories and their struggles and their questions. And for me, then I was like, well, I need to go back and learn more because I have this scope of what I can train anyone. Physical fitness, like I got you. That's my jam. But I didn't understand the depth underneath that. So in 2001, I went back to school again. and studied nutrition from a more holistic lens and view, because the nutrition I taught within school was like Canada's food guide. It was not very applicable. It was definitely not holistic or functional.
Right.
And then that dove me into, I need to understand more about blood chemistry. And, and you just like, you're in this industry, Jaclyn, like you understand it. It's everything you learn and every client you work with. Every client for me, every woman was a new class.
Yeah.
It was like, I need to dive deeper and learn more. And, and eventually, 12 years ago, it's what led me to actually discovering Dutch as a new tool and a lens as to how I can support clients. So my whole mission now is helping to teach women what I think we should have known about our bodies all along. I really do believe the epidemic of health issues we have for women currently right now, especially in perimenopause and beyond, is because our generation was not empowered and taught what was going to happen as a preteen, a teen, your 20s, your 30s, post babies. And so that's how I got to where I am today.
It's funny. I actually had this thought like in the shower this week where I thought I have an 8-year-old daughter. I have 4 boys and 1 girl. And I thought to myself, I will ensure, I'm like, when's the right time to talk to her about her period? But I will make sure she knows what's coming and what's going to
Yes.
happen
Yeah.
before she's surprised with it. Because I don't think my mom ever talked to me about that. And I think, that's like the very beginning of your reproductive years. But you're right. We never really talked about or learned about fertility, reproductive health, perimenopause, menopause. And we're seeing this kind of push. Now we're finally starting to talk about perimenopause and menopause
Yes.
with women in their 30s, which is like,
Yeah.
thank goodness that conversation's opening up.
Yeah. Now it's like the opposite end of the spectrum where we're drinking from the fire hose. And now that
Yeah.
everyday woman is just now so confused, right? Because it's like
Right.
you're trying to meet your body today with like all the things that you wish you knew, yesterday in the last 10, 15 years. So I have 2 kids as well. My oldest is my daughter and she's going to be 20. And, I was fortunate when I was growing up, my oldest sister was 12 years older than me. So I was very naturally exposed to
Mm,
a lot of the conversations. I was reading Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weishler when I was
great
17,
book.
at 17.
Yeah,
So it was
that's
like,
awesome.
that also really helped me to frame it, where I remember being, 23, 24, training women in their 40s and asking, why do I know more about their body than they do? And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's not a good answer to that. I think there's been just so much, I don't want to say shame. I don't know if I would call it shame, but just like lack of awareness,
yeah,
lack of open dialogue,
yes,
and almost a fear to even broach the subject. And that wall, certainly has come down at this point,
yeah,
which I think is great.
yeah.
Well,
And
I
how
love that.
bridge into this conversation today of how does all this translate into like how you do move your body and exercise and
Absolutely.
take care of yourself?
Right. That's a really great place to start because I think, like, if I think back to the beginning of your career, the goals women set when they started to work with you, I imagine they're different than what women say to you today in a lot of ways. What's that experience been like?
Yeah, back then it was very much that was the aesthetic. I want to weigh this much. I want to look this way. I do not want to get bulky, because when I was, in the gym era, when I started to get into it in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a dedicated women's section of the gym. This is where the women train. It
Three
was all
pound
like,
weights,
yeah,
5 pound
pink and
weights.
purple.
Yeah.
And, if you could find a set of 15s, you were like, we've struck gold. And I was always bringing the women into I'm like, let's go into the real gym. Like, let's go on over there. And so it was very aesthetic then. I want to look like this, but not like this. I want to be toned. I don't want to be bulky. So there was a lot of re-education that had to happen. Nowadays, women are like, look, I still want to look good. I want to feel good, but I want to feel strong. My body is changing and my composition in ways that I do not recognize. I don't really feel like I know who I am anymore. And the languaging has changed. So back then it was very just like goal specific driven. Now it's more, I feel like I'm broken or something is broken inside. Like the programming is not lining up with the results. I feel like I'm doing everything and nothing is working. As we're back in the day, women's everything was cardio. It was cardio,
Mhm.
it was aerobics. So they weren't, what they were saying back then was, I'm open to exploring something new. Today's
Right.
woman, she's explored everything. She's done all the classes. She's recovering from being a cardio bunny. She's in the gym lifting weights, but she's exhausted. And she's describing herself as this wired but tired woman. So I used to have to encourage women to actually like do a little bit more. And now I'm like, can we pull your more back?
I found the same thing, funny enough, because I worked with fertility clients and patients predominantly for most of my career. And it was the same thing when I first started in practice. It was like, let's get some movement in your life. And then it got to the point where it was like, all right, we can't be doing CrossFit 5 days a week and like under eating and in a cut and trying to
Yes.
get pregnant all at the same time. I've seen that same thing. It's just,
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Let's start there. Like a lot of women feel kind of confused and frustrated because they finally are engaging in this healthful activity of exercise. They're watching what they eat, maybe eating less,
Yeah.
but then they're feeling like more inflamed, more tired. They're getting sick more often. Like, what's usually happening beneath the surface that's contributing to that pattern?
I think honestly the number one thing is most women don't realize that their life is a marathon and that they actually have way more energetic output physically, mentally, and emotionally than an online macros calculator can assume for. And
Mm,
so if they go in and put in simple metrics like I'm this age, I'm this height, I'm this weight, this is how active I am, and an online calculator spits out, okay, well, based on your values, this is your basal metabolic rate, this is how many calories a day. Break your calories up into this many grams of micro or macros for protein, fat, and carbs. It's not accounting for this woman having 5 children, running her business, looking after her aging parents, the underlying stress that she's not addressing and that's going on. And so we might be feeding a visual body, but we're not feeding the body that has to be able to perform and recover and then go build. So
mm,
most women are still approaching how they nourish their body and their exercise in a deficit mentality. I'm going to do more than I consume, right? I'm going to burn more than I take in. And therefore, I should achieve X result without understanding you're actually already depleted. So this isn't a game of subtraction. This is about addition. We need to actually bring more nutrients into your body. We need to probably bring your caloric load up to at least maintenance and stay there long enough for your body to feel safe for a response to start to happen.
mm. Yeah, talk a little bit more about that because I know like a lot of women eat in a deficit for years, like prolonged periods of time, and that can have some metabolic consequences. And I know that from my minimal exercise physiology knowledge that really you'd want to be cycling that, like sometimes in a feast mode, sometimes at maintenance,
Yeah.
sometimes in a deficit. And I imagine that can be hard for women who are not at their goal yet to like put it on pause and eat at maintenance. Can you talk about what that means and like a little bit about the physiology behind that?
So if we have been stuck in this chronic deficit, under eating, undernourishing, or a lot of all or nothing mentality, and as women, like we're incredible multitaskers, so we like to double dip. We like to eat less and fast. And then we like to eat less fast, but then move our body more. So we always think, well, if this works and this works, how about I put those two things together and I'll get double the results? And for
Mm,
some women, they may see results in the beginning if they have potentially been you know, snacking too often, overeating in different ways. But how I like to approach it with women is actually for the first 5, 7 days, I really just need you to track your habits. The best approach we're going to create for you, the individual, is we have to study your personal habits. So even before we go plug anything into a calculator, can you track everything you're eating, you're drinking, licking off of a spoon, your kids' leftovers, like let's get the full story. Track it for 5 to 7 days. Beautiful. Now I actually have some data. Now I have your personal data. I know what your meals are made up of. I know if you're the kind of woman where your first meal of the day is coffee and then you don't really eat much of your food until later in the day and most of your calories come in the evening. I know if you're the opposite. So now
mm,
I actually have more to go off of. And there could be a lot less that has to be tweaked than what you realize. Maybe you are actually getting in enough calories and the right balance of macronutrients, but we need to structure it. We need to do the timing around your training, the timing around your meetings, the timing around when your kids get home. And so that's it. So for me, we're doing a little bit of like research in the beginning to actually develop the best
mm,
protocol. Most women aren't patient enough to do that or stick with it. So I find for a lot of us, we stop like right before the magic was about to happen because it gets boring, it gets mundane, You may not be seeing things drop off the way that you want them to. And that our brain thinks, well, I'm failing. This isn't working. I'm not doing it right. But for a woman's physiology, the way you actually want to assess this is your sleep improving? How are your bowels and your elimination? What's your mood like? Like, are you actually nicer to be around?
Ask your friends.
Yeah, yeah, ask your
Yeah.
friends, ask your partner. Are you losing less hair, right? Like, this is do you wake up in the morning with a little bit more pep in your step as opposed to a dependency on more coffee, more sugar, a pre-workout, a stimulant?
Mm.
So it is, I said this at the beginning, there's a lot of like, we have to unlearn in order to really understand what's needed moving forward, because how the body will adapt to that woman who is under eating, over fasting, always choosing the harder path is she will have reduced metabolic flexibility. She will have dysregulated cortisol, which means like her adrenals ability to be able to respond and manage to stress is not going to be as fabulous. It'll have a direct impact on her thyroid, a direct impact on her ovarian reserve, and a direct impact on her body's ability to build
Mm.
muscle. So there's a lot.
I love everything that you're saying there, and I think that the focus around like adding is so impactful. And
Yeah.
I see the same patterns. It's so concerning, really concerning, because it's like we need to shift and have food be thought about as fuel for
Yeah.
our amazing bodies, and like what's the best gasoline you can put in there, the highest octane you can put in there. And I also love that you're focusing on those other modes of biofeedback, because weight change is the last thing to
Yeah.
happen, especially when you come in as that like frazzled, stressed out woman with poor metabolism because you've
Yeah.
yo-yo dieted or you've undereaten. Like, so yeah, looking at those earlier tools that tell you you're on the right path and really focusing on that rather than weight or body change
Yeah.
is huge, especially, when you're looking at inflammation coming down and stress being reduced first to kind of
Yes.
be that unlock of the puzzle that women are dealing with.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about stress and the role that stress plays in like making women feel like their body's working against them, and also maybe inflammation and tied into that?
Well, I think this whole thing of feeling like our body is working against us, it's that your body is actually doing exactly what it's meant to do, which is protect you. We just don't like the way in which it's doing it
Mm.
because it's slowing us down on purpose. It is producing inflammation, which a lot of women, when you talk about inflammation, they go, well, I don't have any inflammation, because they think about it like swelling,
Mm.
pain, and sometimes that's how it'll show up. But your mood can be inflamed, your skin can be inflamed, your gut can be inflamed, your bowels can be inflamed, your marriage can be inflamed, your like relationship to self, your ability to respond to stress, like anything that feels out of alignment, stressful, anxious, like that is inflammation. And so I think it's when we can like even change the frame of the way that we look at it. It's like, oh, maybe my body actually isn't managing as well as I thought. And, it's like that's feedback. That's not a flaw. So inflammation is not something that we go, well, just tell me the supplement to get rid of the inflammation or tell me the medication. Let's just like thump it down, get it out. There is a model that's what that would be, is like, oh, you've got inflammation, take this, let's get rid of it. The problem is if we just keep trying to get rid of the signal, we're not understanding the messenger. And
Yeah.
like really, like, where is this coming from? Why am I so tired? Why do I have brain fog all the time? Why did I never have an issue holding on to weight in my stomach? And now I'm like, what is going on in here? So it's getting more curious and asking the questions and then working with people who can provide more insight, provide functional testing, help you to see that chemistry in your own body. Because when you start to see it and someone asks you different questions and they can spend time with you going through it, you're like, oh, okay, I
Hmm.
see it. Like, I get it now.
Now, when you're doing Dutch testing, you mentioned that earlier. What are the patterns or the things that you see that go out of whack that you have correlated with like stalled muscle gain, increased cravings, feeling fatigued rather than energized by workouts, etc.?
I'd say when it comes to when we're looking at like the cortisol patterning in the body, that's something that comes to mind first, which is
Mm.
I'll see one of two patterns. The first is like flatlined, so very low resiliency. Like, like it's not that they don't have adrenal fatigue, they're still producing cortisol. The way in which they manage it is dysregulated, and they're eking it out like it's small amounts. They do not have enough that the body's requiring. So you do see they're kind of hugging the floor. And if you ask them, like, how do you feel at the end of the day? Like, they're like, I just want to lie on the ground. So the way they describe themselves, when I get a client's results back, I don't jump into explaining their results right away. I'll just say, I have a couple questions before we go through, and I'll ask very intentional questions. Like, when you are at your most tired, what is your body really craving? And oftentimes they'll say things like, I just want to stay in bed. I just want to lie on the floor. And I'm like, it's 100% what I'm seeing. And so that's one pattern of just like, they can get up and they can go, but it's because they have to. The kids need them, their job needs them, they got to get up and go. The other is elevated nighttime cortisol. And so they might actually do pretty well throughout the day. And then coming into like the time when either the kids would be coming through the door, activities are happening at night, last meeting of the day, and then you just see they are riding high. And then they'll also say things like, I'm so physically tired, but I cannot fall asleep. Right? That can point to it. And then in the morning, there's no get up and go. So they have very low cortisol awakening response. And then we'll see them, kind of spike as they come into the afternoon. And that's always that woman where I'm like, tell me what you have to do to get up in the morning. And if they're like, oh my God, I snooze 5 times. I have clients that are literally like, the coffee maker's in my bathroom, and I just like find my way to the bathroom and push on. And then once I smell it, and then I start to feel like I, come back to life. So yeah, I'd say those are things. Now, sex hormone pattern wise, oftentimes I will see poor estrogen clearance. So I see a lot of like gut dysregulation in this woman that we're talking about as well. So gas, bloating, irregular kind of bowel activity. Sometimes she's good, other times she's more constipated. So estrogen clearance, the ability for her body to be able to manage that, not fantastic. And that also will match up with some of the symptoms like moodiness, late luteal, like I feel like a different person, exacerbated PMS, my boobs are so sore, my skin's breaking out like I'm a teenager, but I'm 45, like what's going on? Progesterone is definitely starting to ride lower. Definitely we'll see that. And androgen signaling. So DHA production in this woman we're talking about, I typically see it's on the lower end. So it's like if we look upstream, everything is actually already sitting in a deficient picture. And now she thinks the answer to the deficiency is deficit.
That's a really fair point that you're making right there.
We'll be right back with more. If you're already running Dutch tests in your practice or thinking about it, there's never been a better time to become an official Dutch provider. Why? Because we go beyond lab testing. Our provider community gets exclusive access to clinical education, in-depth report interpretation training, monthly case reviews, and one-on-one clinical support. Whether you're just getting started or looking to sharpen your functional hormone expertise, we give you the tools to grow. Join thousands of providers already making a difference. Visit DutchTest.com today. Welcome back to the Dutch Podcast.
So I want to kind of bring this back, and this is relevant to cortisol too, but we tend to see these like compensation mechanisms. And I love that you framed it up that this is not your body failing, it's your body winning in a harsh environment. Let me just reframe it with those words. When we're in a situation that is not ideal or optimal for our body, it adapts. It constantly adapts in order to try, like you said, like to slow you down. That's what fatigue does. It's to tell you don't have the energy reserve to do these things. And this is relevant with cortisol too, because we see this on labs too, where you have early changes.
Yeah.
And then if you do nothing, it gets worse and worse and worse. And it's like your body starts with a whisper or a little tap on the shoulder. And then if you don't, that's those early signs that something needs to shift. And then when you don't listen to it, that gets louder and louder. It becomes autoimmune disease. It becomes, type 2 diabetes. It becomes physical pain if it's a recovery issue. And I think that's really interesting. And we see that with cortisol because we see things like cortisol metabolism shifts, which can shift thyroid function. That's in relationship with thyroid. And, you'd mentioned some of the patterns you see in the diurnal curve. Like those things are important to look at early. I love that you're looking at those things and thinking about that. And I just want to tie those points together, because if you are doing a test and you're not the worst of the worst, congratulations, fix it now, fix it now, fix it early.
Well, and the body doesn't collapse overnight. We don't see that happen in labs overnight. This is the body has been compensating, and it's been trying to hold you together for a very long time. And you've been doing a great job, because we can do that for periods of time. But this is not, our body is not this by design. We are not meant to be running away or running towards something all the freaking time. And as a woman, especially a woman of today's day and age, our mothers wish they had the audacity and courage to be able to be the kind of women they are. They could have the family, pull up a seat at the table, run the business, create the empire and the legacy. And that's all awesome. But we're doing that on top of the expectation of perfect home, perfect wife, perfect life, look amazing, don't look like you're aging. With the actual F, that is like way too much. That is too much for the average person, let alone any of us. Like, anyone who's listening to this, you are either a practitioner or you are a highly educated woman who is that woman who's craving more. And it's a slippery slope when we crave more, because we have to be intentional about it. The craving of the more could be pulling us more and more away from how good we could actually feel. So when we start to see a lot of these compensatory patterns, I do a lot of cross analysis looking at Dutch, and the most common test that we run is the Dutch Complete. I think that's probably fair for most practitioners.
Yeah, that's our most ordered test. About 70% for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's been awesome is, like, I've been doing it for so long, I've been able to see how it's improved over time, and just the way it's evaluated and explained. But I look at it a lot with functional blood chemistry. And you talked about thyroid. To me, this woman that we've just been describing, this is the birthplace of Hashimoto's. It's not that it starts in the gut. It actually starts upstream. It starts with that nervous system as a woman that has to dysregulate the normal pattern of safety and being nourished enough in that. And now there's a downstream effect. So that woman who, she keeps being told that it's just because your iron's low. I'm like, but is that the whole picture? Like, could we look a little deeper under that? And if the iron's low, well, what's pulling on that? If your adrenals aren't doing well, and therefore your thyroid's not doing well, and your system isn't feeling safe as a whole, well, that's going to impact your body's ability to absorb and uptake and assimilate all nutrients, including your iron, your minerals as a whole, your body's ability to convert your thyroid hormones into the usable metabolic kind that's going to give you your brain power back and your cognitive function, support stimulating and regulating your blood sugar health. Like, there's so many layers that are within that. And I think we get stuck in this sympathetic dominance. Like, we actually don't know how to get into recovery mode. Because as a lot of women, I identified like this for many years. My worth was attached to my productivity. If I wasn't being productive, if I wasn't creating, if I wasn't crushing it, in my career, well, then who was I?
Now, this is so interesting to me, because you come from like an exercise performance background.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've come to learn as I've just engaged more and learned more on this topic is the importance of recovery for physical health. Like, your elite athletes, like, maybe share a little bit for listeners. They might have really intense workouts, but what's their rest routine like? It's prescribed from what I understand. Like, can you share a little bit of the insight there? And because I see that being related to our, women who are overtraining and under eating, one, that could have physical manifestations. But what you're bringing up right now is also just recovery from life, from cognitive effort, from the juggling that we handle. And it seems like they'd be really connected.
The recovery is massive. And like, when I think back to my days of working with professional athletes, the team I'm talking about, their support team was the recovery team. It wasn't the performance team. The performance team, like going out, so doing your workout, doing your training, doing the prescribed whatever it is, that's the stimulus and the catalyst for change. It's not where the change happens. So you have to eat to be able to perform. You go out, you do the hard work. When you are exercising, you are literally creating stress. You are tearing muscle fibers down. You are producing inflammation and cytokines on purpose. So we need to prepare the body. This is why women always doing fasted workouts. If your goal is to build muscle and power, probably not the best approach. You should have something, even if it is like a half a banana and some nut butter, or like a scoop of protein powder, and something where there's just like a little bit of some glucose so we can get some stored glycogen in there, a little bit of protein, just enough so that you've got that support. And then the training, you want to go in and you want to train to a certain intensity. You're not leaving an imprint of your sweaty body on the ground. It doesn't always have to be that hard, but it's enough where you feel like you hit a level of training, fatigue, and healthy failure. After, you have to go feed the body that you just stressed out and that you inflamed. So you give your body the appropriate nutrition to go in and now calm that down, to be able to actually go into the actin and the myosin in the muscle, repair, build, come back stronger. Enough carbohydrates to go build the belly of the muscle. And then you have to do the things like sleep, so that not only your nervous system, but that glymphatic system in the brain gets supported. You need to supplement. You need to, mobility work. Like, that is the thing. So all of their team, it was the chiropractors, the osteopaths, there was Reiki practitioners that were on the floor in the space. It was all of those things that really is what allowed them to continue to show up at an elite level.
It is amazing to just understand the level of intention that goes into that recovery phase.
Yeah.
If we were to bring that into women's lives, just generally with recovery, like recovery from stress, recovery from long days at work, lack of sleep, all of those things, what are the ties that kind of bind that together? Like, what should women be doing there?
Yeah, because that's what I just described is not going to be our reality. We don't like finish our workout and be like,
nice.
where's my fluffers? Where's my team to like,
Yeah.
So the reality is, it is, your nutrition is so important. And this doesn't have to be complicated. We don't have to be making gourmet meals and having, these expansive recipes. Very simply, where's your protein and your carbohydrate after your training to go in and replenish that? Making sure that you are eating enough throughout the day and that you're not going longer. I find with women in our practice, 3.5 to 4 hours is the sweet spot. So they're waking up and they're, having a little pre-workout something, then they're having their post-workout first main meal. Then probably 3.5 to 4 hours later, they're having lunch. We find our community does really well with an afternoon snack, typically somewhere in around 3:30, 4 o'clock, so that we are helping to support and stabilize blood sugar. And then they have an incredible dinner and meal that is supporting the right neurotransmitters for sleep and recovery. And then that's it. So for a woman listening, ground level is like, start to actually really record what it is you're consuming so you can see for yourself, is this enough calories? Because 1,400 calories isn't going to cut it. Do you need 2,500 calories? Probably not, based on your goals, but let's at least understand what's going on. And then instead of thinking like you have to get 120 grams of protein in a day or 150 grams of carbohydrates, you could make it a little easier for yourself by thinking meal to meal. So it's like, maybe in the morning, it's like, can you get 30 grams of protein and like 30 grams of carbs? Could we just start with a 1-to-1 ratio? How do you feel after that? My guess, because I see this every day in practice, you're going to tell me, I don't have the same cravings I used to have. I actually feel satiated. This actually feels like a lot of food. And these are the types of things, like I have a course I'm teaching right now that's all about metabolic repair. And every day in our community chat, this is what they're saying, like, oh my gosh, this feels like a lot of food. And then a week in, they're like, I need more food now.
That's a great sign too.
Yeah, it's a really good sign. And then the recovery of sleep. Sleep is it's the supplement we don't have in a bottle, because if we did, we'd all be healed. Sleep is the medicine. So, and if you have trouble sleeping, because this is what a lot of women will say is like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, I know I need sleep. I'm trying, but I can't fall asleep, or I'm waking in the middle of the night. This is another reason why I love the Dutch test so much, is this gives us some additional data to understand maybe why that's happening. We look at melatonin, production, that cortisol curve, but also then we can give very specific guidelines to help you start to get more rest. So maybe it's not deeper sleep you're getting, but can we get you more rest? There is a difference. So I like to get a more rested woman in the beginning and help that woman as she becomes more rested to then be able to become better slept and then wake up with more energy. So I think we're just, we're a society that's like, just give me the melatonin, give me the valerian, give me give me more progesterone, just like knock me out. Give me the tranquilizer. And I'm like, if you're taking those things and you're not getting the response, then we haven't actually pinned the tail where it needed to be on the donkey per se, right? Like we may be getting close, but there might be some other support that's needed.
Well, I think that's the right approach, really, because what we see is when you take like a tranquilizer, sedative type of supplement or medication, we don't see better recovery overnight. You don't see better quality sleep overnight. You might get more hours logged, but you're not waking up feeling refreshed. And like if you use any kind of metric tracking data or a Ring, Whoop, Watch, whatever, what you see is that that is not producing the same impact that you'd expect it to those hours. So it's really interesting. I think that focusing on more rested as a first strategy is probably very root cause impactful. Like what are some of the things you're recommending, like walks or nature or meditation, or are there things that are specific that you would recommend for people that are like, sleep is my optimum goal, but let me start with rest?
Yeah. So, I mean, a good sleep at night starts in the morning. We all know this. So it is like how you eat, stable blood sugar is going to help with sleep, getting fresh air, all of those things. But your relationship to light is massive. So one of the ways we support women with rest is actually getting that circadian patterning back online. So no big lights at night, no big lights. Everything is soft. When you are getting ready for bed, literally, I want you to have a makeout session on your face. Take the time massaging your cleanser in. Take the time. Most women are throwing water at their face and catching it, doing a quick thing in that, and then hopping into bed. Get in there earlier. Stop, watch one less show, let the pan stay dirty, get in there earlier. Take the time to take care of yourself. In the low lighting, put your oils on, do the thing, get into bed. Allow yourself to close your eyes. Don't touch your phone. I'm not telling you have to meditate. Can you just breathe for a moment? Can you breathe for 10 breaths? And really do the thing that's going to calm you down. Think about what you would tell your child who can't sleep. Would you go, yeah, no problem, bud. I want you to go have this sugary drink, which could be not for the kid, but as a woman, wine. I want you to have the sugar at night, have quite a few snacks before you get ready for bed. Watch TV until your eyes are burning, and you actually might fall asleep on the couch first. That's fine. Just get up and then go in, barely brush your teeth, launch yourself into bed, wear things that are going to make you hot in the middle of the night. And before you go to sleep, scroll your phone until your eyes keep burning, and then just throw that phone down next, and then you're going to have great sleep. Never would we say that to somewhere else.
Right.
But we do that.
We do.
And then
we're surprised, and then women are surprised at the outcome, So yeah, absolutely. We got to treat ourselves like babies.
Yes, because we need to be nurtured. And this is the hard thing, I think, as women, is that we are the nurturers, and we're waiting for someone or something or a program or to be the thing that nurtures us. And it's no, that is our responsibility, and it's actually a gift. And if we stopped looking at it like it's a job, and we look at it what a gift that I actually get to take care of myself in the way that I need to be taken care of.
Yeah. A lot of that is, and sometimes it's showing up for yourself in ways no one ever has before. If that type of care has been modeled for you in your life by a partner, by a parent, you're in the lucky few. I think a lot of women have to curate that for themselves and then fight off the pressure to be doing other things for other people oftentimes as well.
But I think that's more of what we actually need to see on social right now, instead of here's my 7-point nighttime routine. You don't have to do 7 different things to go to bed. It could be one thing that just actually makes you feel good and supported and drops and gets you out of that sympathetic fight or flight into that parasympathetic calm and rest. And all of these things, in order for us to be able to build muscle, we actually have to have some reserves. We have to have that recovery. So the body has additional resources and material to now get out of fight or flight, get out of protecting our adiposity and laying down more visceral fat and more body fat and going, hey, we actually have enough on board here. And you're doing a great job taking care of us to go and build that muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. I've really been trying to like rekindle with what brought me joy when I was younger too. Like I do a lot of that as part of my nighttime routine because a lot of it's just replacing bad habits with things that are slightly better. So like reading a book or drawing or journaling be instead of doom scrolling. That would be one example. Like trying to find those things that are quiet activities, but that bring you away from those light centered, active. I mean, we all love a good crime drama, but is that really what we should be doing right before bed?
When clients tell me that they watch like crime dramas or they listen to the crime
Like the
podcast before sleep,
documentaries?
I'm like, okay, let's back it up for a second. I'm like, that's what's relaxing to you?
Right.
We
Yeah.
listen, I said it in regards to tracking food, but if we study our own personal habits, we can learn a lot. Like if our form of unwinding is being stuck in an adrenaline based energy where we keep the cortisol switch on, no wonder you're not getting good sleep because you can't have two things happening at the same time. You cannot have cortisol being stimulated and your body being like when you're listening to something or watching a show, it doesn't know that it's not you going through it. The reason you get so enthralled and you're like, "Oh my God, your pupils are dilating, your heart rate is up, you are producing more cortisol." That we don't produce cortisol to go to bed. We are supposed to get it into like a hum and a rhythm so that we can have the neurotransmitters that step in and hormones like melatonin that are like,
Mhm.
the moon's up now, my friends. That's melatonin's time to shine.
Yeah,
So it is our habits.
absolutely. So when women are in this state where they're not recovering, which I think a lot of women are, and this is persisting long term, can you talk a little bit about what other patterns you end up seeing emerge? You mentioned thyroid already, but what about reproductive hormones?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is where I also find this woman like she will probably struggle more with PMS, potentially even PMDD, spotting, irregular cycle
Mm.
activity, and probably a little bit more feeling like perimenopause is really serving her a harder time. And then, like, why is my friend over here going at the same age, going through the same stage, and she's essentially cruising through it? So yeah, I mean, again, we're withdrawing from our body's bank of support every day, and that's not only adrenals and thyroid. It's our estrogen production, it's our progesterone, it's our androgens, and so the your body's really smart. It'll go and borrow from here to try and support over there. And when I see in women that they're saying to me, I used to just get a period and it was red and I had my bleed. And now I start to spot for a few days before my period. I've never had that before. My period used to be 28, 29 days. And I just had a period show up like 24 days into my cycle. That's not my norm. I
Mm.
never used to get, symptoms or cramps. And like, I'm so much more symptomatic now than I was in my teens and in my 20s. And these are all these cues from the body that it's this thing right now where everyone thinks everything is perimenopause, and I'm like, maybe, and like it
Mm.
could be other things. It's not just all thrown under the rug of that.
Yeah. Okay. So when women are coming into you, what complaints around like training and general symptom picture would trigger for you? I should run a Dutch test for this patient.
I can't perform the same way that I used to. Every time I try to do the workouts at the intensity I used to, I feel like I'm getting sick. I'm sore for a long time now. I feel like I'm actually gaining weight and I'm feeling puffier and inflamed. And then outside of that, it is changes in the cycle. My libido is like non existent.
Mm.
And they've just got some kind of new symptoms that are cropping up. That's when I'm going to be like, why don't we look at a Dutch test and actually see what's going on? Depending on where she's at, I also might recommend doing the cycle mapping and actually get
Mm.
more than the 24-hour information, and do that. And then in conjunction with that, 100%, we're going to go and look at blood work. And oftentimes we'll look at gut and we may test hair. But the Dutch is really, that's going to give me a lot of understanding of what's happening. Like your body's producing it, it's using it, and then what? So we look at production, we look at how the body metabolizes and actually utilizes those hormones. That's what blood isn't showing us,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like there's such a level of added bonus information that you glean when you look at a Dutch test. And to me, the Dutch is like the test where we can throw it on the wall. And now we have the ability to ask different questions about some of the things we're seeing. Um, yeah.
You've explained that so well. And I think I mentioned earlier, like with cortisol, you see these other changes in the cell happen first. We see
Hmm.
this the same thing with type 2 diabetes. The first marker to change is not fasting blood glucose, it's
Yeah.
fasting insulin, right? That is a precursor. Oftentimes by years, you see that creep up and up and up. And I think that's one thing that's really kind of missed when it comes to reproductive hormones. By the time you see changes in the bloodstream of reproductive hormone levels, the tissue changes are pretty profound. Because
Yes.
then the brain is listening to the cells of the body to what is released and then it's responding. And production is it's a pattern of response really
Yeah.
to the environment. So I love the way you explain that because with urine metabolites, you're actually looking at the environment. So it's
Yeah.
a little bit of an early, like a leading indicator.
Yeah.
If you can take that as a framework to think about it, it's like a leading indicator. And we see that too. We see changes in the patterns of estrogen metabolites, for example, early before we see changes in the hormone
Yeah.
patterns that you could measure in serum. So I love the way that you explain that. And I think sometimes for women who are not at a disease state yet, but they definitely don't feel like themselves, you can uncover why
That
by
to me
looking at
is
metabolites.
that's your greatest time of opportunity.
Yeah.
It's when we're in the suboptimal, which means like you can still get by. You got a lot of good days, but the ones that don't feel good, you're like, oh, something's going on. And that's really the opportunity that we have to go a little bit deeper and do some of the foundational work and work with someone and get some of the added knowledge because you want to get in front of this. Like, as you just explained it, what's happening on that cellular level, this is what is informing, this is the feedback loop, right? Of like what's informing the symptoms, how the body's going to respond to that. And we're so fortunate to be in a time now where we have the accessibility to this type of knowledge and information for our bodies.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So as we think about like providers who are listening to the podcast today, I mean, I'm loving that there's so much more information out there on things like mobility, recovery, rest. What do providers need to know about like nervous system recovery and how they can help their patients? Because I think one of the barriers to us implementing it is that we don't even know how to do it for ourselves,
Yeah.
let alone how to coach someone else. And I think that when it comes to like women providers, predominantly women serving women, in a women's health field or working with hormones, even with men, like what do providers need to know about how they can better deliver this information, this type of care to providers?
When you're talking to your clients, yes, we want to have women doing things that are going to build muscle. Like we want them strength training, we want them lifting weights. You as a practitioner, I think part of your job is to be the permission slip for her that she can't be for herself right now. Give her permission to walk instead of running. Give her permission to not wear the weighted vest when she's going for a walk. Give her permission to not have to listen to a podcast or book and just go, like listen to yourself. Think about like the clients we attract and work with. My whole thing for most women is like, we're going to get you to strength train 3 to 4 days a week. But your form of that right now might need to be Pilates on the mat or on a reformer, or maybe it's bar, or maybe it's walking for a period of time. Like help her define what it is that she needs for herself, not just telling her. Like be the teacher, not the teller. That's the difference, right? So this is, I think, one of the things that I'm so grateful for as a practitioner. We have a relationship with our clients, and that is be a partner with her. And so what does she love to do? If you have the client where everything is hard, right? So like you tell her to go for a walk, she's like, perfect. I just ordered the 30-pound walking vest, plus I have ankle weights I'm going to put on. No. Take the weight off. You're already wearing a weighted vest in your life every day. We don't need to strap a literal one on, right? So those kind of things, encourage her, if she has a hard time winding down, get her to lie on the floor and just intuitively like do some stretches, go have a bath, go soak in the tub. You want to read your book, beautiful, go do it in the bath. Put the magnesium, you're in trouble taking it, go put it in the tub, right? So just paint this picture for her where it actually, there's so much simplicity and ease in it, and it brings a lot of peace into her body.
I love that. It's beautiful. Like that ease and that like permission to seek out ease.
Yeah.
God, we all need that. I'm going to write that one down. So you have so many programs serving women. We talked about them at the beginning of the podcast, introducing you, like the Hormone Project and Ignite, and you have Synced, you have Peri and Menopause Project. You have so much going on. If you can transmit like one kernel of information for women, like what is it that you want to see shift and change for women through that kind of is a thread that motivates you with all these programs?
Honestly, you're holding so many more of the answers and solutions than you realize in your body. Stop outsourcing everything to believing that someone else knows more than you do. Align yourself with people who will remind you of that, even when they're teaching you and empowering you and they're part of your support team. Remember that you have the most brilliant gift we've ever been given, which is your body, and all of the symptoms and all the ways in which it's talking to you that feels like a foreign language. These are actually, this is trying to get your attention. And so what can you do for yourself to lean in? And I would say if you're looking at like any of the programs and things that we offer, Synced is a great landing place for women because we unteach you what it is you've been taught to be healthy and strong and fit as a woman. And we give you an opportunity to actually do more with less, to be honest. Like, exercise in a way that in 35 to 40 minutes, you are going to feel so strong and so fit and so fierce and not crushed. You don't need a nap after. You're going to move through your day. So I would just say peruse, like Instagram is the best place to connect with me, Jenn Pike, hear what we've got going on. But honestly, ladies, trust your body. Trust her the first time she talks to you.
I love that. What a great place to end. Well, we'll put the link to your Instagram in the show notes and also your website so people can get more information about you. But it's been a real journey, like just a great time having you on the pod today. So thank you so much, Jenn, for coming.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this chat.
Yeah, me too. And for those of you who enjoyed this chat and want to learn more about hormones and how you can support yourself as a busy practitioner, busy woman, I just want to remind you, we release a podcast episode every Tuesday. So stay tuned and subscribe so you can get all the latest into your inbox. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on the Dutch Podcast. Join us every Tuesday for new conversations with leading functional health experts. If you like what you've heard, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.